one more community engagement project we're going to go through, but I want another note. If you, as I'm sure we all do, check into a hotel and immediately look for our local public television station, NPT is not listed on the little card that's in your room, but they are there at channel 58, so we'll plug for you guys. The next project we're going to hear about is the LZ Lambeau and Wisconsin-Vietnam War Stories. And to tell you more about that, we have Don Jones and John Miskowski.
Thank you. I think it can be argued that Vietnam, along with the Civil War and civil rights, were the most contentious issue that's ever faced this country. And for many of us, this is a war that ended 35 years ago. It is history, but certainly for the men, the women who served, for their families, it's something that's with them every day. Like our World War II project in Wisconsin, which many of you duplicated, many of which you, I will admit, led the way on that as well. In our Korean War project, we started this Vietnam project with conversations with Vietnam vets. VFWs, American Legion halls and libraries, and a restaurant in Cleveland, Wisconsin, which I never knew existed before. We had conversations with Vietnam vets, 5 of them, 10 of them, asking them to talk about their story. And they came. They were reluctant, they were skeptical. One said what I think a lot of them thought when he opened the meeting and said, all right, what bullshit is this now? I think they came to the table because we were public television. These are men, women who had very bad experience with the media, have a lot of distrust, are certainly not, have not talked, have not shared their story, and are not eager, didn't come eager to share their story. They were willing to give us a chance. And what we heard was excruciatingly difficult. And we had heard a lot of conversations with World War II veterans, with Korean War veterans, anybody who sees combat, that experience doesn't go away. They carry it with them their whole lives. But there was something about Vietnam that these men, these women had served. To hear how they struggled to make sense of that war, how they struggled to make sense of their sacrifice and loss, and had no answers for that. It just struck us as profoundly different in the sense of those previous 2 projects. At that very same time, where we were having these conversations all this day with Vietnam veterans who had never told these stories before, we had a community or a presentation, and 2 elderly gentlemen sort of worked their way to the front of the room, and one of them sort of grabbed my arm and he said, I just want to thank you for your World War II documentary. That really meant a lot to me. It was really important that our story was told. And I so appreciate that. It was great to hear that, and asked about his service, and introduced us to his friend who had heard nothing of our World War II project. And it was like, and so we had the DVD and we shared it with him, but it just struck me at that moment that we were launching this large project about Vietnam, and we were very aware of the limitations of broadcast and how many people we can reach and what that means to people and what it means to their lives. And it prompted this question in Wisconsin Public Television is, how could we do something that would reach every Vietnam veteran in the state? And we realized that's a very ambitious idea. But it just felt like something we had to do, or at least a question we had to ask. And so, with that question in mind, I want to share some of the things that were the elements of this project so you can see how we put it together. More importantly, I want to introduce you in a minute to Don Jones, who worked with us on this project and also shared his story. And then some of the images from the community events that we did. So like, you know, as you might expect on a public television program, we had a documentary. I think increasingly we're very aware of the importance of the archive, of the value of these interviews. We now in Wisconsin have interviews of World War II vets, Korean War vets, and Vietnam vets, over 250 that are now this new archive for the state. I think we're more and more conscious of how that material, how that content is available, but more and more conscious about how important that is as an element to this. We have an archive of stories that we've only begun to tap in the documentary. Of course, we have a companion website to share those stories, to add additional stories. There was a curriculum component for schools. There was community screenings in our reel-to-reel program in partnership with the Wisconsin Library Association and the University of Wisconsin system. So that challenge of dealing something in a large geography allowed us to get in communities in Superior and Janesville and Racine and Beloit, which are, you know, I don't know, it's like 12 hours apart. And so some of these things we were conscious about getting into other communities and getting to communities across the state. These community screenings were an effective way to do that. In addition, the Wisconsin Historical Society used the interviews to publish a book, Our Veterans Remember. In fact, it was just cited as one of the 10 best Wisconsin books of the year. We also, our photographer created a portrait exhibit that traveled in museums. And his idea was that these powerful photos of veterans that he took and their simple excerpts from their interviews should be in different venues, not in veterans halls, not where you might usually see them, but in art museums. So this opened at the Chase Museum, which on the heart of the University of Wisconsin campus, of course on the heart of the anti-war movement in Wisconsin and Madison, and sometimes the nation. Very, very powerful location for these folks to be featured and their stories to be shared. That led up to, and this project continues, to LZ Lambeau. This weekend of activities, which we, for a while, were describing as Wisconsin's Welcome Home Weekend. LZ stands for Landing Zone. It's a military term. It's a place of embarkment, a place, more importantly in this context, to return to. In Vietnam, the Air Mobile War, the folks were brought in by helicopter, dumped. That doesn't sound like a great word, John, but they pulled out on those sites. And that word LZ was very important to them. And that's in the Vietnam Veterans Lexicon and their vernacular. That was important in all the things that we did, that we were mindful to the things that are meaningful to them. That weekend included, it started with a cross-state motorcycle ride to really, again, engage this entire state in this project. We had the moving wall, which is the reproduction of the Vietnam War Memorial. We had museum exhibits. We had a motor pool exhibit of Vietnam era vehicles. We had the big map, which Don will probably tell you a little bit more about. We had a lecture series, lectures on the Hmong in the war, women in the war, music in the war. If you haven't been to Lambeau, it's a big place, and it just added this atrium. And it's really a really wonderful place. But what struck me when we were working on this event is it's a huge, huge place. And our lecture series was in the 4th floor of the atrium, and I thought, nobody's ever going to find these. Every lecture that we did was full and out the door. It was incredible, this weekend of events. We estimated about 70,000 people participated in a series of events. There were art exhibits throughout Green Bay on the month leading up to this event. There were school tours at the event. Curriculum was developed. StoryCorps was there, and then we had a Saturday night tribute event inside Lambeau Field, which was broadcast on Wisconsin Public Television, Wisconsin Public Radio, and Milwaukee Public Television. To give you a sense of what that was like, we have a video from